Gorillas have long been known for their incredible intelligence and emotional depth, but nothing could prepare the world for what happened after one of their own passed away. The story you're about to hear will challenge everything you thought you knew about the emotional lives of animals. When Marcus, the leader of a small gorilla troop at the Greenfield Sanctuary, suddenly died, the other gorillas' reactions were nothing short of extraordinary. It was a cold morning, and the sanctuary was quieter than usual, as the staff mourned the loss of one of their most beloved residents. Marcus had been a towering figure, not just in size but in spirit. For years, he had led his troop with wisdom, guiding them through the sanctuary's sprawling grounds. But when Marcus took his last breath, something remarkable happened. The rest of the gorillas didn't just mourn in silence. They did something that shocked everyone who witnessed it. Emma, his daughter, who had been by his side through every stage of his illness, seemed to understand that something had changed. She approached his lifeless body, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and confusion. But then, without warning, she turned to the younger members of the troop, her voice low and guttural, a sound unlike any of the usual calls. The other gorillas, typically calm and solitary, suddenly came together in a way no one had expected. They began to act in a protective, almost ritualistic manner, as if they were making sense of their loss in a way that no human could understand. John Carter, the sanctuary's lead ranger, watched in disbelief as the troop formed a circle around Emma and the younger gorillas. Each one seemed to take a turn looking over the younger members, as if ensuring they were safe, and guarding them from what felt like an invisible threat. This wasn't aggression. It wasn't fear. It was something else, something more profound. John had seen gorillas form bonds before, but what he was witnessing now was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The gorillas weren't just reacting to the death of their leader. They were responding with a deep sense of community, as though they understood that the loss of Marcus could not be allowed to unravel the fabric of their troop. What happened next left John speechless. The gorillas, one by one, approached Marcus's body. They gently nudged him with their hands, sniffed him, and then moved away, leaving the body as though they had said their goodbyes in their own way. And then, in a moment that John would never forget, Emma let out a soft cry. It wasn't a mournful cry, but rather a sound of resolve, of acceptance. The other gorillas, perhaps sensing the shift, began to move away from the body, their protective gestures fading into a calm but purposeful silence. It was as if they had come to terms with Marcus's passing, not with sadness, but with a quiet strength. This wasn't just the passing of a gorilla. It was the passing of a leader who had held the troop together in ways that no one could explain. As the sun rose over the sanctuary, John couldn't help but think that what he had just witnessed was something far beyond simple animal instinct. It was a profound expression of family, leadership, and love. The gorilla's actions had shown a level of emotional depth that left everyone, including John, in awe. As the days passed after Marcus's death, the entire sanctuary seemed to hold its breath. The air was thick with the unspoken sadness that filled the hearts of everyone who worked there. But what continued to baffle John was the behavior of the gorillas. Each day, the troop would gather around the same spot where Marcus had passed, and it seemed as though they were remembering, or perhaps honoring, their fallen leader. Emma, the young gorilla, led the way. She was no longer the playful cub that once frolicked around the sanctuary grounds. She was now a solemn figure, her eyes deep with the wisdom of someone who had seen more than she should have for her age. Her actions grew more protective, more deliberate. The other gorillas followed her lead, and even the more solitary males who had once stayed to themselves became more involved in the troop's daily routine. They would gather together, close their eyes, and for a moment, the only sound in the air was the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional low hum of their breath. John had never seen such unity in the gorillas. It was as if Marcus's death had created an unspoken bond between them, one that made them more connected to each other than ever before. One afternoon, as the sanctuary staff prepared for the weekly tour, John watched from a distance as Emma stood near the edge of the group, looking out across the field where the younger gorillas were playing. For the first time since Marcus's death, Emma seemed to show a hint of softness, a flicker of her old self. The playful spark in her eyes had not completely faded. As if on cue, one of the younger gorillas, a curious and energetic male named Rocky, approached her cautiously, trying to initiate a game. Emma hesitated at first, her movements slow, but then, in a surprising moment of tenderness, she reached out and nudged him playfully. It was a small gesture, but it was enough. The other gorillas noticed, and for the first time, they seemed to relax. The tension that had been hanging in the air lifted just a little, and the troop began to engage in their daily routines with a bit more vigor. As the sun set that evening, casting a warm glow over the sanctuary, John stood in awe. He realized that the gorillas, despite the heartbreak of losing their leader, were finding their way again. They had come together not out of fear, but out of love and respect for each other. Emma had shown them that even in the face of loss, there was a way forward, a way to honor what had been and still move on. The bond between the gorillas was unspoken, but it was deep and profound. John couldn't help but feel a sense of peace watching them. It was as if, despite the pain, they had found a way to heal together. As the weeks went by, the Greenfield Sanctuary slowly began to return to its routine. The loss of Marcus was still felt by everyone, but the troop of gorillas had begun to find a new sense of balance. John Carter, the sanctuary's lead ranger, observed this shift with a quiet sense of wonder. He had watched the gorillas grieve, and now, he was witnessing something even more extraordinary: healing. The most significant change had come from Emma, Marcus's daughter. Her once quiet nature had transformed, and she was beginning to take on a leadership role in the troop. She was no longer just a grieving young gorilla. She had become the steady presence that the others looked to for guidance. Emma's actions spoke louder than words ever could. She led the group with confidence, and it was clear that the other gorillas respected her. As the days grew warmer and the sanctuary's gardens bloomed, Emma's connection to the rest of the troop deepened. One afternoon, John was watching from a distance as Emma sat quietly beneath a large oak tree. Around her, the younger gorillas played, their energy finally returning after weeks of uncertainty. Emma remained calm, her gaze thoughtful as she observed the younger gorillas. It was a peaceful scene, one that reminded John of the simple beauty of the natural world. He couldn't help but marvel at the way Emma seemed to know when to step in and when to step back, always maintaining a sense of balance. Later that week, something remarkable happened. The sanctuary had been working on a new enrichment program for the gorillas, and John was curious to see how they would respond to the new activities. The staff had set up a series of challenges that encouraged the gorillas to solve problems and engage with each other. Emma, who had been a bit reserved during the earlier activities, suddenly stepped forward with a sense of purpose. She was the first to approach the puzzle, and it didn't take long for her to figure it out. Her eyes sparkled with a quiet intelligence as she manipulated the pieces, her movements graceful and sure. The other gorillas watched in awe as Emma completed the puzzle, and for a moment, there was a sense of unity that hadn't been there before. It was as if Marcus's death had sparked something in Emma, something that had been waiting to emerge all along. She wasn't just leading her troop through grief. She was guiding them forward, helping them rediscover their strength. As the sun set that evening, casting long shadows across the sanctuary grounds, John felt a deep sense of gratitude. The gorillas had shown him something profound, that even in the face of loss, there could be growth, healing, and a renewed sense of connection. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about thriving together. Emma had become more than just a survivor of her father's death. She had become a beacon of hope for the entire troop, and watching her lead the way was a reminder that even in the most difficult of times, the bonds of family could carry us through. As the months passed, life at the Greenfield Sanctuary slowly returned to normal, but the shadows of Marcus's death never fully faded. Yet, something extraordinary was happening within the gorilla troop, something that continued to surprise even the most seasoned rangers. Emma, who had once been quiet and unsure of herself, had become the unquestioned leader of the group. She no longer just mirrored her father's actions. She had transformed into a figure that commanded respect. Her bond with the younger gorillas had grown stronger, and it was clear that her leadership had become a source of stability for them. One morning, as the staff prepared for the annual wildlife education program, Emma led the troop toward the newly built outdoor play area. The younger gorillas followed her lead, their excitement palpable as they ventured into the open space for the first time in weeks. John watched from a distance, observing the subtle way Emma guided the group. Her movements were deliberate and calm, and the younger gorillas responded to her presence with a sense of comfort and trust. Emma seemed to understand the needs of each gorilla, from the smallest cub to the more independent adolescents. As the day progressed, the gorillas engaged in a series of activities designed to stimulate both their physical and mental abilities. John had never seen them so engaged. They seemed to have formed a new rhythm as a group, working together to solve puzzles, gather food, and even play together in ways that hadn't been possible before. It was as if the grief that had once consumed them was slowly being replaced with a renewed sense of purpose. Emma's leadership wasn't just about directing the troop. It was about creating a space where they could heal and grow together. As the afternoon sun dipped low in the sky, Emma and the younger gorillas settled near the edge of the play area, their bodies relaxed and content. John could see that Emma was no longer just the daughter of the fallen leader. She had grown into something much more, a protector, a guide, and a teacher. That evening, as the staff gathered around the main lodge, John sat quietly, reflecting on the transformation he had witnessed over the past several months. The gorillas had come a long way since Marcus's death. They had found a way to move forward, not by forgetting their past, but by honoring it in the most beautiful way possible. Emma had become a symbol of strength and resilience, not just for the troop, but for everyone at the sanctuary. She had shown them all that, even in the face of loss, there was always a way to rebuild, to grow, and to keep moving forward. The sun had set, and the night air grew cooler, but John felt a sense of peace settle over him. The bond between the gorillas had become even more unbreakable than before. They had faced their darkest moments together, and now they were standing stronger than ever. Emma had led them through the storm, and it was clear to John that, with her at the helm, the troop would continue to thrive for years to come. As the seasons changed, so did the atmosphere at the Greenfield Sanctuary. The days became warmer, and the nights cooler, but one thing remained constant: the strength and unity of the gorilla troop. Emma, now fully embraced as their leader, continued to guide her group with wisdom beyond her years. She had become a beacon of hope not just for the younger gorillas, but for the sanctuary staff as well. John Carter watched from a distance as the troop interacted with their new surroundings, navigating the challenges with grace and determination. The once heavy sadness that had hung over them seemed to be lifting, replaced by a growing sense of community and purpose. Emma had found her rhythm, and with it, she had brought the troop back to a place of balance. As the days grew longer, the gorillas became more social, engaging with each other and the humans at the sanctuary in ways they hadn't before. It was as though Emma had unlocked something deep within them, a shared understanding of their place in the world and in each other's lives. One afternoon, John witnessed a moment that perfectly encapsulated the transformation. Emma, as usual, was leading the troop through a new enrichment activity designed to challenge their intelligence. She carefully observed the younger gorillas as they interacted with the task, but her focus was never on the puzzle itself. It was on her troop. She moved with ease, offering encouragement with a subtle gesture, a glance, or a nudge. The other gorillas responded to her cues, and John could see the trust they had in her. They followed her every movement, knowing she would lead them through any challenge. As the task progressed, something remarkable happened. The younger gorillas, once hesitant and unsure, began to show their own problem-solving skills. They were no longer just following Emma's lead. They were starting to think for themselves, engaging with the task in their own unique ways. It was a beautiful sight to see, and John couldn't help but smile as he watched the troop work together. They were no longer a group in mourning. They were a family, a strong, united force, growing and learning together under Emma's watchful eye. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, John sat quietly, reflecting on the changes that had taken place over the past few months. The gorillas had found their new normal, and it was something far more powerful than he had ever imagined. The bond they shared was unbreakable, forged through loss, but strengthened by love and mutual respect. Emma had led them through one of the hardest periods in their lives, and now she had given them something even more valuable: the ability to move forward with hope and strength. The gorillas were thriving once again, and it was clear to John that under Emma's leadership, they would continue to flourish for years to come. As the year moved on, Emma's leadership continued to strengthen the troop's bond, and the Greenfield Sanctuary began to see the fruits of their efforts. The guerrillas had not only survived the loss of their leader, Marcus, but they had thrived in ways no one had anticipated. The younger guerrillas, who had once been timid and unsure, now exhibited a confidence that was a direct reflection of Emma's unwavering presence. John Carter, who had spent years working with guerrillas, watched with awe as Emma guided her troop through a new phase of their lives. The grief that had once consumed them had given way to a renewed sense of unity and purpose. Emma had become more than just the leader of the troop. She had become the heart of the sanctuary. Her every movement, every decision, was made with the well-being of the entire troop in mind. One of the most profound changes was the way the guerrillas now interacted with the sanctuary staff. Where there had once been a clear divide between the humans and the animals, a bridge had been built through Emma's leadership. The guerrillas now approached the staff with curiosity and trust, no longer seeing them as strangers, but as companions in their journey. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the sanctuary in its golden light, John observed a heartwarming scene. Emma and the younger guerrillas were playing near the edge of the enclosure, their laughter and excitement filling the air. As they ran and tumbled together, Emma's protective instinct was evident. She watched over the younger ones, ensuring they were safe and content. But then, in a moment that captured the essence of Emma's growth, she did something unexpected. As a young gorilla named Max stumbled and fell, Emma immediately rushed to his side. She gently nudged him, helping him to his feet, and then stood back, allowing him to try again on his own. It was a small act, but it was a powerful one. Emma wasn't just guiding the troop with authority. She was nurturing them with kindness and patience, encouraging them to find their own strength. As the days passed, Emma's role as a leader evolved even further. She was no longer just a protector. She had become a teacher, showing the younger guerrillas how to navigate the world with confidence and grace. The staff, too, began to see Emma in a new light. They realized that her leadership went far beyond just leading the troop through difficult times. She was shaping the future of the sanctuary, creating a new generation of guerrillas who would carry on Marcus's legacy in their own unique way. As winter approached, the guerrillas settled into their new rhythm. The sanctuary, once a place of sadness and uncertainty, had transformed into a place of hope and renewal. Emma had led the troop through the darkest of times, and now, with each passing day, they were becoming stronger, more united, and more prepared for the future. John watched as the troop gathered together at the end of the day, Emma at the center of the group, her presence both calming and inspiring. The bond between the guerrillas was unbreakable, and under Emma's leadership, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The passing of the seasons brought a sense of calm and stability to Greenfield Sanctuary. The guerrillas had found their way through the storm of grief, and now, as the sanctuary blossomed in the spring warmth, Emma continued to lead with a steady and caring hand. John Carter, the lead ranger, had never seen such a transformation. The troop had not only healed, but they had flourished under Emma's guidance. What had once been a grieving group of guerrillas had now become a tight-knit family, united not just by the loss of their leader, but by the strength they found in each other. Emma had truly become the heart of the sanctuary. Her actions were thoughtful and deliberate, always focused on the well-being of her troop. Every decision she made reflected the deep bond she shared with each member. The younger guerrillas, who had once relied solely on Emma for guidance, were now beginning to show signs of independence. Emma's nurturing leadership had created an environment where they felt safe to explore, learn, and grow. It was no longer just about survival. It was about thriving as a family. One afternoon, as the sun began to set and the cool breeze swept across the sanctuary, Emma led the troop to a quiet part of the enclosure. There, the younger guerrillas began to engage in a new activity that Emma had introduced, a game of hide-and-seek. The troop had played before, but this time, it felt different. The younger guerrillas were quicker, more confident, and eager to join in the fun. As the game continued, Emma stood watch over them, her eyes scanning the area, ensuring everyone was safe. It was a simple game, but it was a powerful moment. Emma wasn't just keeping the troops safe, she was encouraging them to play, to enjoy life again. This was something they hadn't done since Marcus had passed, and for John, it was a reminder of how far the troop had come. Emma had created a space where joy and laughter could thrive once more. As the game came to an end, the young gorillas gathered around Emma, their faces beaming with happiness. Emma gently ruffled one of their heads, her expression soft and loving. John stood in the distance, feeling a swell of pride in his chest. He had seen the gorillas through some of their hardest days, but now, he was witnessing something remarkable. They were no longer just surviving. They were living. The loss of Marcus had been devastating, but it had also brought out the best in the gorillas. They had found a new sense of purpose under Emma's leadership. As the days turned into weeks, John continued to watch as the troop thrived. The bond between them had grown even stronger, and Emma had become the anchor that held them together. The other rangers noticed the change as well. The sanctuary had transformed from a place of mourning to a place of hope and resilience. Emma had led them through the darkest time of their lives, and now, she was guiding them into a future full of possibilities. The future of the troop was bright, and with Emma at the helm, John knew they would continue to grow and thrive. The loss of Marcus would always be a part of their story, but it was no longer the defining chapter. Together, as a family, the gorillas had found their way forward, and it was clear that under Emma's leadership, they would face whatever came next with strength and unity. As the days turned into months, the transformation at Greenfield Sanctuary continued. Emma's leadership had not only united the gorilla troop, but had also sparked a change in the way the sanctuary operated. The staff, inspired by Emma's strength and resilience, began to see the sanctuary not just as a place of care, but as a place of opportunity for the gorillas to learn, grow, and thrive. The gorillas were no longer simply surviving. They were truly living, embracing the world around them with curiosity and joy. John Carter, the lead ranger, couldn't help but marvel at the incredible progress they had made. The once mournful troop had found its rhythm again, thanks to Emma's steady hand. Emma had become more than a leader. She had become a symbol of hope, not only for the gorillas, but for everyone who worked with them. One morning, as the sun broke through the early morning mist, John stood by the observation deck, watching the troop engage in their daily activities. The younger gorillas, once hesitant and unsure, were now confidently climbing trees, playing, and interacting with one another in ways that were simply beautiful to witness. Emma, as always, watched over them, her eyes scanning the environment for any potential danger, her movements calm and deliberate. But today, there was something different. Emma was standing at the edge of the clearing, her attention focused on something in the distance. John could tell that she was deep in thought, as though she was contemplating something significant. He walked closer, not wanting to disturb her, but curious about what had caught her attention. As he approached, Emma turned toward him, her gaze soft but determined. "John," she said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot lately." John gave her a knowing smile, sensing that Emma had something important to say. "What's on your mind, Emma?" he asked gently. Emma paused for a moment, looking out across the sanctuary, as if considering how to express her thoughts. "I think it's time we begin teaching the younger gorillas more than just survival skills. I want them to learn about the world beyond the sanctuary, to understand that there's so much more for them out there when they're ready. I think we can help them grow into leaders, just like my father." John's heart swelled with pride as he listened to Emma's words. It was clear that she had been thinking deeply about the future, not just for herself, but for the entire troop. "I think that's a wonderful idea, Emma," John said with a warm smile. "You've done more than just lead them through difficult times. You've shown them what it means to live fully. They trust you, and they follow you. You have the power to guide them into something truly remarkable." Emma's eyes shone with determination. "I want them to understand that leadership isn't just about being in charge. It's about taking care of those around you, about lifting others up, just like we did for each other. We can create a future where every gorilla here has a voice, where every one of them has the chance to lead in their own way." John nodded in agreement, knowing that Emma's vision was one that could truly change the future of the sanctuary. It was a vision of hope, unity, and strength, qualities that had already made her an extraordinary leader. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden glow over the sanctuary, Emma turned to join the others, her heart full of purpose. The troop, once a place of mourning, had now become a beacon of hope, and under Emma's guidance, it was clear that their journey was far from over. Together, They would face whatever came next, united and stronger than ever. As the days turned into weeks, Emma's vision for the future of the troop began to take shape. The younger guerrillas, who had once looked up to her with wide-eyed admiration, now followed her guidance with a sense of purpose. Emma was no longer just a leader who helped them survive the loss of Marcus. She had become the architect of their future. The changes that had swept through the sanctuary were becoming evident to everyone, not just in the behavior of the guerrillas, but in the way the sanctuary itself operated. The staff had embraced Emma's approach, incorporating her ideas into their daily routines. They had begun introducing more complex enrichment activities, tasks that challenged the guerrillas mentally and physically, helping them develop new skills. These activities weren't just about keeping them occupied. They were about fostering independence, problem-solving, and leadership. John Carter, the lead ranger, was amazed at how far the guerrillas had come. He had witnessed firsthand the transformation that had taken place since Emma stepped into her role as leader. The troop was no longer defined by the grief they had endured. They were now defined by their strength and resilience. One sunny afternoon, John watched as Emma led the troop through an obstacle course that had been designed to challenge them both physically and mentally. The younger guerrillas approached the course with a sense of excitement, their movements quick and confident. Emma stood at the edge, watching them carefully, ready to step in if needed, but never imposing herself. She had taught them to trust their instincts, and it was clear they were doing just that. As the guerrillas navigated the course, John noticed how each one was growing more independent. They were working together, supporting one another, and showing incredible problem-solving skills. It was a sight to behold, and it was all thanks to Emma's leadership. She had created an environment where the guerrillas could not only learn from each other, but also from their own experiences. Emma had become more than just a protector. She had become a teacher, shaping the future of the troop with every decision she made. That evening, as the sun began to set and the sanctuary grew quiet, John found himself standing next to Emma, watching the troop settle down for the night. It was a peaceful moment, and for a moment, John reflected on how far they had come. The guerrillas, once lost in their grief, had found their strength through Emma. The family that had been torn apart by loss was now whole again, and they had Emma to thank for that. Emma turned to him with a soft smile, her eyes filled with a quiet confidence. "I think they're ready, John,"